Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March call of Called by Love Institute. It's wonderful to see you and even those just on the phone to know that you are with us. So on this spring and so much going on everywhere in the world, what a blessing to be able to be together and just placing an intention for a wonderful call of connection, of love, of harmony, and cultivating that peace and joy within ourselves that we can spread into the world. And with that, Marge, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Good morning, everyone. How beautiful it is. You know, I absolutely love the fact that we have these calls together. And as a result of that, we are able to come into this space of community and gathering and checking in. What I know is that we are in a time of collaboration, and it's a time of a collective gathering. The era that has existed for about 250 years with dominant cultures and dominant genders and dominant many other things is fading. It's dissolving, and we're coming into an era that is about a collective consciousness, that is about collaboration, that is taking us into oneness. Will this happen overnight? Well, over the next 250 years, probably. So I'm guessing all of us on this call are part of the birthing process, part of the planting seeds process, part of the awareness collaborative. I love to call it the love team. And it's so beautiful to be here with you today. If you've noticed, this has been a rather strange month. Anyone else hold up your hand if you've had some strange stuff going on in your life this month? Anyone? Change, uncertainty? Anyway, I may come back to a little bit of some of that more toward the end of the call, but just let me give you a glimpse of what's happening in the cosmos now. I actually was enrolled in a course called Cosmos and Psyche, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was with Rick Tarnas, a university professor and really brilliant person that has studied the cosmos in many different ways. And as a result of that, he wrote a book and they did a whole web series on it. So one of the things that is going on this and has been going on this last month is that Mars is squaring Uranus, and Uranus is semi-squaring Black Moon Lilith. And on Friday this week, Mercury is going to trigger the separating of Uranus and Black Moon Lilith. And on April 4th, Mars will finish up the trigger of the separating of Saturn and Uranus square with a conjunction to Saturn. And so what that means, most of you probably don't care anything about naming planets. I know Ed doesn't. But I'm learning a little bit about it. And what that means is that we are in some of the most provocative, intense territory where things can get explosive. We can be trigger happy, we can be reactive, and it can be intense. And the shadow work kind of practices that many of us have learned over many years of spiritual work are highly useful in this time and into the April 4th when Mars conjoin Saturn. So I'm going to set aside that little bit of information. And if we have time at the end of the call, I'll come back to some of that. But what I want to start with is an invitation for all of you to have some paper in front of you, just a blank sheet of paper, maybe a notebook, and just begin to write down things that are mentioned or things I say or anyone else says that sort of strike you as interesting, or, oh my God, that's been happening in my life too. And as you begin to see some of these things, I would like to have you share. So this call, I really want to be about a check-in. I want to be about you sharing with me and me sharing with you. And next month I may be in Boulder and I'll be on the call, but Fabienne will be leading it and planning it. And so, this is an unusual time for me. And I'll update you on my brother in my update. But the whole theme this week is about change and new birth in a field of miracles. And so the first thing that you might write at the top of your sheet of paper is change, and then leave some room for things that you might think of, and then write rebirth or new birth. New birth is not rebirth, but new birth. And then leave some space and write field of miracles. Because what I will tell you is you're going to have a choice. And this is probably going to happen over the next 2 or 3 months, but also the rest of the year. April 4th is going to set the template for the next 12 months. And that this year will set the template that gradually begins to mature the new birth over the next 2 or 3 years. So we're not in a short-term process. It's like a baby is born. You don't send the baby to college when it's only a month old or a year old or 5 years old. There's a maturing process that has to go on. And you and I are like parenting figures. We have potentially planted the seeds for the new birth. In our human bodies, it's called sexuality. Or if it's coming from the levels of awareness, it's about planting seeds of awareness. Most of us are in that phase of our lives now. We're no longer doing the physical kinds of planting as much as we were in our maybe teens or 20s or 30s. And so it's really interesting to sort of see spirit, soul, and body. So many of us are really moving into the soul awareness, and that begins to happen when we begin to see through the eyes of love. Really, really important shift. And so I ask in the invitation that you all received, how are our lives, your life, and the world transforming, transitioning? And so that's what I want to really, really check in about and notice how it's happening and just being aware of it. It doesn't mean you have to do anything about it, just being aware of it. And then how are we doing as beings of light, as carriers of the light, as channels for the light? How are we doing in this time of cycles that are spiraling in time and in timelessness? This cycle that we're in now that I just referred to in that introductory paragraph about the planets, we're in a cycle that happened originally at the time of the Revolutionary War, 250 years ago, before any of us were even born. And it has repeated some of its aspects at the time of the Civil War. We are in a time of tension and a redefinition. It also repeated at some of the aspects in the time of the Vietnam War. So it's fascinating and this is something that Rick Tarnas in the book Cosmos and Psyche has paid a lot of attention to history. So it's about birthing, it's about maintaining, and it's about dissolving. What are you birthing? What are you maintaining? And what are you dissolving? What I will mention is that many of us get stuck in our maintaining cycles. We feel comfortable in our lives and we don't want it to change. And sometimes the rug gets pulled out from under us and something changes that we didn't even anticipate. When Ed and I knew each other in our early 30s, our lives changed at one moment in time, and neither of us knew it was going to happen. It was when I went for a summer in New York, and all of a sudden, new possibilities, new potentials showed up. We had no idea those things were going to happen 6 months earlier, and they happened anyway. So what's birthing, what's maintaining, what's dissolving? And how does it relate to involution, the descent of spirit, and evolution, the ascent of the soul? How does it relate to the living flame of love? So Fabienne is working on doing some organizing and clearing out in the garage this week, and she found this card. It just sort of, Fabienne, you said it just fell out. Do you want to speak about that?
I can say a few words. Yeah, I was trying to reach some things that Mort had said can go out, and then reorganizing like a big Rubik's Cube of everything, reorganizing and what to indeed dissolve and what to keep, all of that. And there was this big trifold cardboard that Mort had with various cards on it, which I put on the side so she can have that. But this one literally fell off. And because it is the mission of Called by Love Institute, as I came back up before going to bed, I placed it for Mort to see it in the morning, and that's where it landed here.
So that cardboard actually was a project that got created by me for a class that was being taught by Arlene Mazak at Unity of Tustin. And that was when she lived here before she moved to India. And she had been a teacher at the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, and it was a wonderful class. And that was my class project. And I had taken some of the treasures out of my card drawer and put them on that trifold. And so, first of all, where did I get this card? I got this card when I was in my first semester of ministerial school in 1985. That was coming out of a time of huge change in my life. I was in the process of what would eventually end up as a divorce. Hadn't happened yet, but I didn't want it to happen. And I was doing everything I could possibly do to make it stop and not happen. And I had sold the house that I owned on Warnell Road, and it was under contract. And that was when my husband, to whom I was married at that time, John, told me on a telephone call that he wasn't sure he wanted me to come to New York. Well, that was a shocker. And so this is how shocks can show up in our life. And I ended up moving to Unity Village to the apartments across Colburn Road called Unity Villa. And it was during that time that I applied for and enrolled in ministerial school. And one day in the first semester of my ministerial school 2-year process at Unity Village, I was in the bookstore at Unity Village and I saw this card. And it says, someday, after we have mastered the winds and the waves, the tides and gravity, we shall harness for God the energies of love. Then, for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. And that was written by Teilhard de Chardin. And that is part of the mission of Called by Love Institute. So it showed up in my life then back in 1985 as a card I liked in the bookstore. It showed up when we began to incorporate Called by Love Institute 10 or 11 years ago. And it's still showing up. The living flame of love is something that I often think about and experience. And right now in this revolutionary transit, it's filled with the fire energy. And some of it's showing up as in a kind of warrior kind of energy. It's not always easy when we encounter warrior energy. So, birthing, maintaining, and dissolving, and the living energy of love. And so, does a field of miracles include all of it? The good, the true, and the beautiful, as well as the difficult and the shocks and the surprises and the things we couldn't have even imagined. Is all of it part of a cosmic plan? Of our soul's evolution? Do we get stuck in our comfortableness sometimes? I'm clearly stuck in the comfortableness of many of the things that I've collected and called treasures in my life. This card was one of them, although I intend to keep it. I filled a whole trash container this week with things that I had stacked in my closet for the last 3 years. I didn't hardly even look at them. I just realized that if I hadn't looked at them in 3 years, I wasn't going to look at them in the next 3 years. And I started pitching them. I was actually going through a period of intense frustration. I was pitching them into the wastebasket, and I got a big bag so big I couldn't carry it. So I managed to put it in some smaller bags the next time and filled a whole trash container, which will go on the street tonight and be picked up tomorrow. Have you ever done anything like that? Some people call it downsizing. Some people call it spring cleaning, going through things, different ways to name it. Is it part of a divine dissolve? And is this part of how it works as we shift, as we change into new birth? And personally, surprise and shock has been the most difficult for me. And I told you about one of the surprises and one of the shocks on the call last week, which was my brother's fall on the ice on his birthday on January 12th. And then a second fall on the ice in February. And then a third fall in his apartment in March. And he has landed in the hospital 3 different times and is there now. He's probably going to transition out of it tomorrow, but all huge surprises to me. And guess what? I have had to deal with it. Did I want to? No. Did I intend to? Well, not consciously, but of course, my love intends to always care for people I love. And so, I'd sometimes have to figure that out on the fly. and sometimes it has to be navigated. And Fabienne and I have been doing some of that. And we did a session on Monday where I talked about a contract with God and invited her to think about what hers was as I updated one of mine that I wrote almost 30 years ago. Just more details applying to the now moment. It's a little bit about the same process that we're experiencing in the nominee for the Supreme Court, and her talking about case law, and you have to update what the intention was in the 1700s to what it means in the world today. Newspapers have turned into other kinds of communication. And how do you apply case law today? So all of these are so interesting to be aware of. So what has been most difficult for you? And what has been most joy-filled for you? So if you were to update your case study or case law, how would it change? And is it cosmic? Is it personal? Is it individual? Is it collective? Is it receptive? Is it active? Or is it both and? And does it have repeating patterns? These are really interesting questions for me. But see, a part of me learned how to do research way back when I was at UMass and working on my doctoral dissertation. I'm still fascinated by it, not by looking at what other people say, but by observing it in people's lives, in your life, actually, all of our lives and other people. And at some point in the next year, maybe not now, I may actually do a course that is an advanced course for people who want to do those deep dives. So when have you felt the void? When have you felt the darkness? And what have you done when you felt it? Did you invoke the light? Or did you focus on the darkness and scream and yell? You can do that too. Those are all choices. You know, Code 5 in the book talks about choose ye this day whom you will serve. And so there's a whole lot of people in this country that are invoking a whole different paradigm than other whole lot of people. And it's not, they're not trying to, right now, it's very, very polarized. Have you noticed? And they're not really trying to communicate with each other right now. It's part of what we're going to have to work through, hopefully, with consciousness. We'll see. Anyway, how is it about shifting and changing? And what is going to be restructured in our lives? Is it going higher? Is it going deeper? Is it causing a horizontal shift? You know, I may be in the process of a horizontal shift with what's happening with my brother. I could move to Colorado because he may need that kind of support. I might be the one that would say yes. I don't know. There are so many questions in the unknowing. Do you have any questions in the unknowing? And are you remembering what you have learned in your spiritual experiences, in your spiritual practices, in your spiritual integration? Are you remembering? You know, that song that we use on one of our calls, let me remember I am one with God. And is it being reflected in your life individually, in your life in the collective? Does that include your family? Does that include your community? Does that include your state? Does that include your country? Does that include the world? And how is it changing you? Are you remembering your spiritual skills like shadow work? Are you being able to see when your awareness is a small a and it drops and takes you into pain and suffering? Are you able to simply witness it and breathe and pull it out and go into a capital A awareness? It simply witnesses and sees it all and doesn't get pulled into a destructive spiral. Can you go higher even and get the glimpses? Are you beginning to receive downloads as you do that? All of these things are part of the process. And how is, for example, something like a mantra supporting you? Om Namah Shivaya was the mantra that David now initiated with me initiated me with when David and I, he now uses Swami Brahmananda, were co-teaching East Meets West for 17 years at Unity in Tustin. Om Namah Shivaya. And now probably the mantra that I use most of all is the promise from A Course in Miracles. Once I have accepted God's plan as the one function that I would fulfill, there will be nothing else the Holy Spirit will not arrange for me without my effort. The Holy Spirit will go before me, making straight my path and leaving in my way no stones to trip on, no obstacles to bar my way. Nothing I need will be denied me. Not one seeming difficulty will but melt away before I reach it. I need take thought for nothing, careless of everything except, and this is a huge except the one purpose that I would fulfill. And clearly for me, that has evolved and come into my awareness. My one purpose is living love. It's not being enlightened. It's not being high success, as it was when I was writing my doctoral dissertation. It's living love. It's not about money. It's about love. So what I want to do is ask you if you have anything you would like to share, and we'll take some of these share breaks. If no one raises their hand and volunteers, I will go on. What I can tell you is I have enough material. I could talk for the full 90 minutes, and I'd much rather hear what you have to say, but you have to volunteer. I may call on some of you. I have a habit of doing that. Who would like to share what came into their awareness about their own life or their own?
Patty is ready to share.
All right. Patty, unmute.
Marge, your story about you and Fabienne cleaning out the garage reminds me of what's going on in my own life. I live 10 feet from the door of my next door neighbor, who is a woman who's 94, and we were very good friends for the first 4 years that I lived here. However, mental health, maybe dementia, maybe schizophrenia, something else, has caused a schism in our relationship, where she thought I was a witch crawling in her kitchen window, stealing her black pants and her VA paperwork. And she became very kind of threatening and antagonistic towards me, who used to take her trash out and befriend her. So this has been a real challenge for me to just pray for her happiness and give her her space, and yet feel safe myself. So I was away last week, and during that time, she had a real health challenge that has put her in the hospital, and she's at the end of her life right now. And so what came to my mind this morning, so since I got back from being away, her family, like 5 members of her family, and multiple people in our neighborhood have been in there because she was kind of a hoarder. And that every day there's more stuff coming out. And so it makes me realize that I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of baggage, a lot of junk that I want to do that spring house cleaning on. And what woke up to me this morning is, I hope that she forgives me for anything that's on her soul, and that I forgive her. That was my first thought. And then my next thought is, hey, wait a minute, there's nothing to forgive. And that was so...
it's both and.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
At every level of development, and in all of the different realms that you've progressed through in your entire life, whether you look at it in 10-year cycles of decades, or whether you look at it in 7-year cycles or whatever, you have a different view of forgiveness. So when I was a Seventh-day Adventist, I had a very different view of forgiveness than I did in my 20s or 30s. And when I was married to John, who I referred to when he went to New York and said, I'm not sure I want you to come, I had a very different view of forgiveness at that time in my life. I had a different view of relationships at that time in my life. And now I live in the awareness of forgiveness means there's nothing to forgive. And you mentioned both and. Notice that these are part of the evolutionary worldviews in your own growing up in different stages of your life. And so what you will do, Patty, and this is so beautiful, is that you will begin to develop the ability as you have this kind of awareness of forgiveness is knowing there's nothing to forgive. This comes from the dimension of oneness. It comes from the dimension of knowing that we project onto other people what's in us, and they project on us what's in them. So the which she projected onto you is part of her. And
it's her illness. It's not her real essence.
That's right. That's absolutely true. It's one of the worldviews from some kind of experience she had, probably in her growing up, or maybe religious education, who knows? Doesn't even matter. And so just stay in the purity of essence. This is what's so important. Stay in the purity of essence. If you drop down and start jabbering about it to all the people in the neighborhood, you will be part of the problem, and you'll be in her worldview rather than your worldview. So just hold the love in your heart and let the light dissolve the shadow. It's that simple. That simple. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anyone else have anything they would like to share? Let's see. Fabienne, I'm going to let you watch for hands.
Okay, I see Bruce. I'm unmuting, asking to unmute. Wonderful. And thank you, Patty.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Bruce.
Good to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Hi, Marge.
Good to see you too.
Let's see. I've taken some notes here, and I don't even know where to start. I'll start with both and.
Fabulous.
I think both and is one of the most profound notions. I mean, those two words articulate an incredibly profound notion. Every war people have been involved in has been struggles between either or. And both and, or either or, didn't exist until Adam ate the damn apple. You know, metaphorically, or however we care to look at it. Prior to that, there was no separation. There was no either or. And in that story.
So we could ask ourselves, have we eaten the apple?
Of course we have. We're living on the apple. Prior to that,
my computer is an apple. It has both and either or.
I talk about this occasionally in other groups, and prior to that incident, whenever it happened in whatever form it was, we didn't know how to judge. That's when we learned how to judge, right? We were forbidden to eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. We didn't know the difference between good and bad until then. And so here we are. And I also heard it said that, that first separation was very painful. And at the time, we could have said, oh, pain, this is no good. Let's go back. We could have done that, I think. But instead we judged the first judgment. We judged the judgment, right? And then on, and here we are, how many thousands of millennia later, and the world still operates on judgment and reactions to the struggle of either or. And whenever we want to get somewhere, we first have to find out and accept where we are.
Yeah.
And I think I'm 2 weeks into another 6 weeks program with Jeff and
Jeff Carrera.
Carrera, yeah, and what we practice is being completely content with the way things, exactly the way things are, and when I can achieve that, it opens an awareness in my head where I'm able, in my being, to where I can see both sides of either or. And I can see things like, if we knew better, we'd do better. I haven't kept up with the details of what's going on over there in the Ukraine. Generally speaking, I know what's going on. We know what goes on in war. I had friends blown to pieces in Vietnam. I saw the opening sequence to Saving Private Ryan. I know the horrors of all that. And as tragic and catastrophic as it is, it's kind of the same old thing for the same old reason. Failure to recognize and hear both sides of the duality, and somehow
is that failure to recognize love in everyone?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, but how we get directly to love, I mean, I think I can only share about my process, and when I practice total contentment and acceptance of things exactly the way they are, it opens my heart, and so I don't know what the process should or could be for the collective, but I do believe that each of us as individuals, our inner experience has an effect on the collective, and I don't know what to do about the Ukraine. I don't feel moved to jump into some group and go out and protest. Not at all. I think the best I can do is is what I'm doing, is not taking sides and not screaming and yelling and calling names. I think that's positive. Instead of worrying so much about trying to do good, I think we could all benefit by doing less to contribute to the problem. Just stop throwing gas on the fire. And, I'm speaking in metaphors, but I don't know what else to say about it.
Maybe we're coming back to this. And then for the second time in the history of the world, we will have discovered fire. But it's about love. We shall harness for God the energies of love.
I believe that's happening, Marge, and I get so encouraged by attending groups like this or listening to the guys I listen to sometimes, the great teachers, because they are very. I get they help me believe that there's real possibility of profound shifts and changes, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, and listening to them just gives me hope when I can sink into this just despair, essentially. Oh man, we're so screwed. What are we going to do? Well, I think I feel that there's something I want to say and I forgot what it was, so I guess I'll just stop there. But uh, certain things give me a lot of hope, and I don't think we're as far from the solution or the healing or the love as we might think we are sometimes. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. Profound. And so if it comes back to you, what you forgot, raise your hand again.
Thank you, Bruce. That's beautiful. So I know, Ed, you have something to share, and then we'll go to Tustin after that.
Okay. Am I on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess, Bruce, what I don't understand is both sides. Both sides. I mean, any religion, any spirituality is always focused on the well-being of others as well as yourself. So where does the both sides come, or where does the difference of sides? I mean, both sides, meaning more than one or two. I guess I don't understand that if you're looking for added from the principle of religion and spirituality. That's all I got.
Does anyone have an answer for Ed?
I could just share a story, Ed, because I talk about this sometimes with a few friends, and they have similar questions. And I'll just share a story that I heard about once, and I've shared it with Marge that might illustrate. Joseph Campbell. I heard this story from Joseph Campbell. And he spent his life, studying religion, spirituality, and across the world, across many cultures and faiths. And he was in a cave someplace, and I probably won't get the story just right, but they discovered I think I would call it a mural, but it was a depiction, a beautiful depiction, rendering on a cave. And on one side, either the left or the right, there was a beautiful description of heaven with angels and all the beautiful colors and everything. And on the other extreme was a depiction of hell with the fire and the suffering and the pain and all that. And exactly halfway between the two, imagine halfway between the two, which where I would say they cancel each other out, and directly above was a covey of angels, and suspended from the angels was a cord or something to the Holy Grail, and the angels were descending at the exact midpoint between heaven and hell, which was what I would describe both and, where they not only cancel each other out, but they no longer exist. It's like before we ate the apple, there is no, and so it's really hard to imagine that place where there is no judgment, there is no criticism, there is no, I think it's right in front of our noses, and it's just hard to imagine such a place, but.
I wonder what would happen if we had a circle of 12 people, and 6 of them were the Ukrainian young boys, because most of them are younger, some a little older, but the ones that have been demanded, you stay here and fight for your country. And 6 of them were Russian young boys who had come to liberate the country. And they both have, imprints from different influencers. And what if we could sit in a circle and listen? And I would volunteer to be the facilitator of that. I did it for years at Unity in Tustin. And it would have some rules. What are you feeling in your heart? Speak only for yourself. This will be sort of like a 12-step group, Bruce. You've been involved in those for years. Speak only from your heart. Speak only from your own experience. What are you feeling? What do you yearn for? And only one person can speak at a time. We used to do this in board meetings. And if we go into the silence for 10 minutes or 3 minutes even, and we ask the Holy Spirit or Allah or God or Christ or Buddha, it doesn't matter. You can call it George. It doesn't care what you call it. Call it Ed. Call it Fabienne. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't care. It just wants you to, yearns for you to see through love. And you go around the circle, one person at a time, and maybe every person has 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes to speak from their heart, not their mind, because the mind will always trick you and lie to you. Your heart never does. How would we feel after we listened to everyone with a pure awareness rather than a conditioned awareness? I think that's the middle line you're talking about, Bruce.
Absolutely. And, I've experienced that. And so, I love the idea of the circle with the people in it, but somehow they have to be shown or made to trust that it's absolutely safe in there to say anything and everything without fear of being attacked, criticized, judged, beaten, imprisoned, executed, which is what goes on these days. Why would anybody be willing to tell the truth under with those fears? Of course, yeah, that would be a beautiful thing if that circle of people who were able to open up and speak from their heart, that many of them never have.
I used to call it, our board meetings were like prayer meetings when we could do that. And we had other times that weren't. Sometimes we could, and sometimes we couldn't.
Who knows when that space jumps up, because I've experienced it probably quite a few times, but there's no formula for it. You can get the people together in a room and it might happen, it might not, but when it does.
There is a formula. The formula is you have to listen with pure awareness and love.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to listen with love, you're going to be listening with judgment, and it's not going to work.
But the real challenge is, how do we invite people to transition from that place of judgment to pure love? Because you're absolutely right. But how to get from there to here? I know what my path was, and ultimately I had nothing to do with it. I was visited by grace. I participated, that's for sure. But how do we encourage, invite people to take the risk? It's a huge risk to do that for the first time, anyway.
Yeah,
Definitely. I know Dustin is waiting in Pathy, but before I just have a few things I would like to share. Thank you, Bruce. Another thing that appeared in the garage yesterday resonates so much with what you shared with that line. I brought it up. I haven't even shared with Margaret yet. I wanted to ask her what was the history of this one. It might be the same as the other one. But look at this image. Oops, can you see it? I might have to undo the background for a second. Can you see that?
Yeah.
The magic presence, it says. And I found this as I was testing if Bud's old TV was still working, if the DVD was still working, because that's one of the items that was in the process of going. We'll see, Marge, I saw your note this morning. But as I was testing that, I watched two DVDs. One was The Conscious Evolution from Cindy Wigglesworth that Marge had downstairs, and the other one was The Truth, The Journey Within. And in the Cindy Wigglesworth, she was talking about, it's again about spiral dynamics and all the levels with integral. And it wasn't applicable to this situation with Ukraine, but it was definitely applicable to the situation without using those words. And then when I was done with that, and I was still working, trying to fit the pieces in the new way and having the things ready to go in a convenient way for the people, or how we will have them move. Then I saw this DVD that Marge also had, The Truth, The Journey Within. And it was all about heart coherence also. Like both of them were very, very complementary. The first one about spiritual intelligence, and the other one about heart coherence and heart math. And there are more synchronicities there. So there was just so many synchronicity. I want to pass on the mic, but I will say one more thing, and I'll put a link in the chat, and in the recording, I will put that link in the description as well. There was one video that was taped on 9/11 in the morning, just after the announcement was made. This was with Tony Robbins, who had an event. I wasn't there, obviously, because I was in New York. I wasn't involved with that group yet. But in that video, you see from at the time, there was obviously many different worldviews of what was happening. And then he facilitated a process where one Muslim man and one American man enter in a dialogue, and you see all the feelings, and it starts with, well, it's just retribution, and then at the end they really come together and embrace, and then since then they had been working together for peace. So I will put that link if anybody is interested to watch that. And Tustin, I know you had asked to speak. I don't know if it's on this topic, or if we I'll unmute and you can say if it's this topic, or we go to Patty first and come back to you. It's up to you.
Well, I would like to talk on this topic because I've been doing a lot of thinking and trying to figure out what could I do to help the situation in Ukraine. And can you hear me?
Yes.
And did not really come up with anything that I could do that would really make a difference, except one thing. And I thought about the butterfly effect, where a butterfly flapping its wings in one corner of the world has an impact in the opposite corner of the world. And I also thought, and I can't remember his name, a Japanese scientist, Emoto or something like that, who studied crystals. And I have a book of his photographs of crystals where he would put a piece of paper on he had many test tubes of water. And some of them he would write, "I love you." Others he would write, "I hate you," or "You're ugly," or "You're beautiful." And then he would, with electron microscopy, he would take a photo of those crystals after a few days. And the crystals with nice messages were beautiful. The crystals that had unpleasant messages were really ugly. They were malformed. They had abrasions, just ugly things. And then I remembered another time when I had been on the computer a few years ago. And I think it was the same fellow had organized a time over the computer when all of us in the world would meditate at this specific time for a lake. I believe it was in Russia. It was a lake or a river that was so polluted and had all these microorganisms and just poisonous and toxic. And we all meditated for, I don't know if it were 20 minutes or what, at that time, all of us who signed up. And they tested the water before and they tested the water after. And there was just considerable reduction in the toxicity of the river. The water became pure. It was just amazing. So what I was thinking is that the only way I personally, and many of us, can really help with the Ukraine situation is through meditation, and through meditation that's not specific to an outcome, not to say the Ukraine is right and Russia is wrong, and oh, isn't Putin a terrible, terrible person? And we want him to get to think like us in the Western world. But if we can meditate and think and meditate on the outcome for the best in the world, not for a specific outcome, but for the universal power, whatever you consider God to be, the greater good or whatever. To think about that, to pray, I don't know what I consider prayer to be, but meditation. I think that I'm an energy worker, so I think in terms of energy, but to send energy to that situation for the best possible outcome for the world and for all people. And that's the only thing I think we can do to send to that situation. But if as many of us as possible can do that kind of meditation throughout the day, maybe 3 times a day for 20 minutes each, if we can do that, that maybe something can emerge from that situation, which is good. That's all I can think about. So that is what I am doing to make it my contribution.
You know, I relate to that so much. And the one contribution that I can consistently practice is to let my heart radiate love and let it go out to people I'm with in my immediate environment, if they're willing to receive it, to let it go out to people I speak with on the telephone, if they're willing to receive it, to let it go out beyond that to communities where I've been in the past, in the present, in the future. Because see, time doesn't exist horizontally. Ultimately, in timelessness, it's vertical, and past, present, and future are all one. So right now, I can radiate that love out through my heart into Boulder, where my brother is, into where he's in a hospital, waiting to find out where he's transitioning to. That's the greatest gift I can give him. And of course, I'll participate on other levels too, as appropriate, as I'm called to, but I'm not in charge. It's real clear to me. Radiating the love is what's most important.
That's beautiful. And love has no desire for a specific outcome.
That's right. No desire for a specific outcome. It's unconditional.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dustin.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dustin. That was beautiful. Yes, Patricia, I saw your message, so thank you. We have Patty, then I will come to you. And one more thing, Dustin, it was so beautiful what you shared. I just wanted to highlight that I put also the link of Craig's talk on Sunday at Unity about being peace, because it's completely in alignment with what you just shared. And for those watching the recording, I'll put that link also in the description of the recording. And so let's go to Patty and then Patricia. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and keep it brief. Thank you. I feel like Dr. Emoto came to Unity. Did he, Marge? I remember us doing the water and the crystals.
We did it, but I don't think he came in person.
Okay, maybe we just did a book study or a group. Back to Ed's question about sides, I just want to share my understanding of that. I think that people who are locked into fear and power see the world, the cosmos, as having sides. And I kind of have compassion for them because of that old prototype of Maslow's theory of that maybe they're struggling to get food on the table, or they feel very threatened. So bless their hearts. And then it's not really a side, there's the love consciousness that we all are, and we hope that they can tap into their own divine center and their love and join us because we've already joined them. So I just want to talk about the sides there. And I guess that's it. Thank you. I want to hear from Patricia next.
Thank you. I'm trying to ask you to unmute, Patricia.
Thank you. All right. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, March.
Good morning.
It has been said, but for a while it wasn't being said, so I just wanted to chime in. One of the things that has come into my life in the last 10 years or more is a knowledge of the net of light, which is the fabric of life that runs through all of creation. The animals, the humans, the cosmos, everything. And it's piggybacking on what all of you said in Dr. Emoto's work. If in prayerful love from your heart, as Marge says, which you animate the net of light from the jewel of the heart, going into your heart and bringing forth the love. I mean, we have such privileged lives, and to want that for all, and to send it out, and it ripples. It's the ley lines, it's the great web of the cosmos that the ancients knew about, and scientists have actually, finally with the Hubble telescope, photographed it in the 80s, and you can look it up on the internet. They're called the net of light, or Nedra's light, or the fabric of life, or the great cosmic net. But what we are doing, as hopefully we're light workers, we're sending a loving vibration out through the net. And all of the strategic discussions and the wrangling sends out a very different vibration through the net. And to me, it has been encouraging to see the solidarity of countries that have come together for the Ukraine. And there were many times we should have done it for many other countries, but it is happening now. As Marge said, this is a new time. And I am hopeful and prayerful that it's a new paradigm, that the world is saying, it's enough. It's enough. We don't want wars anymore. This is an old thing. And to think that Putin can bring back old Russia is such being locked into such old thought. We can never bring back old America. We're never going to bring back anything that was. It has gone. We are going forward. We are expanding. We're being recalibrated to be new ways of thinking. And every time I get into my strategic mind, I get a little off base. I overreact, blah, 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 blah. And if I can keep in this, in the heart mind, then I'm okay. And I believe it's the same for us. And like the water being changed and the butterfly, all of those are cosmic truths. So we do have something we can do. And I'm with you. I'm not going to go out and storm doors and things. No, I think we're there. We used to be called prayer warriors. And it's gratifying. And the moment of giving is the moment of receiving. So, anyway.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. You know, I think of myself as a spiritual warrior. Sometimes I'm fierce. And that is part of my being a spiritual warrior. But when I'm fierce, it's about love, not about hate. Yeah.
Lovely, Marge. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. That's beautiful. Very powerful. I don't think we have had other hands yet. Jan, a reminder for you, if you would like to speak, I think you can unmute yourself by, I think it's *6 for you and everybody else here. Either wave at me, at us, or raise your electronic hand, or we can go back to you, Marge.
Well, I may give you just a brief update on miracles in the last month related to the life of my brother. And so you heard me talk about the shock last week. And so I'm starting with the miracles. Our call last month was on March 16th. So on March 17th, the first miracle was when Johnny Thomas
I think
called.
you mean February, Marge.
What?
I think you mean February.
No, I mean March.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Wait. Yeah. You're right. March is this month and February was last month. You're right. Thank you, Fabienne. So on February 17th, Johnny Thomas called me and said, I'm just thinking of you. And then the same day, Pete, who is the person that manages the apartment now, called me and so authentically talked from his deepest heart about his deep and mixed feelings. And just that authenticity, this was like sitting in the circle and listening to the 12 people, because we all have those 12 people within our own inner awareness. And that began the month for me. Another call came from Johnny about a vision that he had had for a collective kind of setting and related to housing. And then another call came from Mary Pat, Willard's beloved sister, and telling me she had put both Willard and Mary Pat on a waiting list for a place in a senior living setting that was 5-star and wonderful. And just these indications of tiny moments of connecting were part of miracles for me. And then on the 20th of February, I got the phrase, I think I used it for the first time, the love team. And people come in and move out of that. This is not a permanent group of people that are all identified as forever, because sometimes people want to be part of the love team and sometimes they don't. And so it's a moving kind of team. And then one day a physical therapist showed up for Willard and I thought, oh my God, physical. This is spirit, soul, and body. This involves therapy of the physical as well as therapy of the soul. And spirit, of course, does not need therapy because it's whole without it. And so all of these kinds of things I noticed as miracles. And then in February, late February, Johnny introduced me to Ross and Mary Hostetler, and they have been just amazing gifts and are helping me now in creating new structures relative to the physical. Ross's background is a lawyer, Mary's background is real estate. Both of them they're experts in their field, but they're also people that I find of very, very high integrity and open, and their hearts are just pure. And then on the first day of March, I got a call from Willard, and on the call he said, and notice that I'm kind of logging these, and I would invite you to log miracles in your own life when they happen. Keep a logbook of miracles. And on the first day of March, I got a call from Willard, and one of the things he said that I wrote down, Ruth, this is one of his caretakers, She is from Pakistan. And he said, Ruth is really good to me. Well, what I realized, all of his caretakers are from Pakistan. They have come here from an Eastern country. They are all brown-skinned. Willard has been with an American Midwest Republican imprint for his entire life, a somewhat prejudice around people of color. And now he is having his life impacted profoundly by people of color, brown-skinned people from Pakistan, from an Eastern country with an Eastern spiritual leaning toward Krishna rather than his Seventh-day Adventist background, which of course is toward a very conservative, traditional idea of Jesus. And Ruth is really good to me. Just by Ruth being really good to him, she may be actually imprinting a new life pattern for Willard without ever saying a word. And then I got a call from someone in a senior living place setting. His name was Justin. And I had called him independently as a result of signing up for a list that I didn't know was a list. It's called What About Mom or something like that. And Mary Pat's sister had called independently, and Mary Pat had actually her sister had arranged for Mary Pat to go to Morning Star so that she could begin to heal some of her memory issues. One of the things that brought up was their cat, Mia. Willard loved Mia, but Mia was all of a sudden creating some difficulties, and allergies were coming out, cat allergies. And so it was clear that we needed to find something for Mia. And I absolutely said no to taking it to Mia to the Humane Society, because I was afraid that would mean euthanasia. And I said, they must have cat boarding, they have dog boarding. And so miraculously, someone found a cat boarding. They called it a kitty hotel. And Mia went to a kitty hotel. Well, what's happened since then is that as Willard fell again in the apartment and obviously can't be there, and Mary Pat's not there, there's no one even to take care of Mia. And so Pete, who manages the apartment now, was wondering about Mia, but didn't have time to go by Kitty Hotel. And now the person who's been taking care of Mia at the Kitty Hotel and works there has offered to adopt Mia. And she's fallen in love with Mia. Now, Mia is an interesting cat because Mia has balls. Mia is a male cat who got renamed by Willard and Mary Pat. And Mary, my friend Ross's wife, Mary, said, "Oh my God, I've never heard of a Mia with balls." And I said, Mia is a transgender cat. See how it all applies? And we laughed. So Ross and Mary met Willard and talked about, potentials and in March. And I talked about the potential of a trip to Colorado. And I thought things were really, really going well. I thought a total miracle was happening with bringing him home. And then he fell in the apartment at home again, because he was impatient and impulsive and would not wait for the caregivers to be standing in front of him when he got up out of his chair. He fell and hit his head and created another trip by ambulance to a Kaiser hospital this time. And he ended up having brain surgery. And they had to bore 2 holes in his skull in order for the blood and the brain to heal. And Shock. Talk about shock and surprise. I thought everything was right on track for healing, and didn't work out that way. And so really, really fascinating. So Mary and Ross are working on what I've done for years called the sock model. Some of you may remember it. What's the situation? You can write that in one paragraph. What are the options? Do it if at least 7 options on the human plane. If you want to go into the spiritual plane, do 12. Put each option on a different sheet of paper and let it be given to you, the options from your human mind for the first 7, from your spiritual awareness from the next 5, and and it'll take a while because this can fill up 10 or 12 different consequences. Because once you have the options, then you start looking at the consequences for each option. So I got an email from Mary that they have created that document for me to look at. I haven't seen it yet, but she said that they have a 16-page memo that they're sending to me with that sock model defined and described. I can't wait to see it. It's a vision of a collaborative, and Pete is a realist. And he said, it can't just be vision. You've also got to pay attention to the details. And so, Ed, there's the both and. Vision plus details. Vision plus paying attention to the human plane, paying attention to all of the kinds of things that are part of living in the human plane. And so it's really, really fascinating as I have looked for the miracles in this month. Pete meeting with Mary and Ross and talking to them with a total open heart, and Ross talking about some of the work he's doing in Finland about climate change. And all of a sudden, Pete's having a whole different vision of Ross, because he thought of him as somebody that was going to try to sell the apartment house. And he's seeing a bigger, vaster vision of what the heart integration is all about. And then I got a beautiful call on my answering machine that had gone to voicemail from Mary Pat. And it was like 3 or 4 minutes long. And she was just talking about how much she loves Willard and how much she loves me. And she kept saying, tell Willard I love him and I can't wait to see him. I can't wait to be with him. Maybe Pete will come and get me and take me to visit Willard. And that could still happen, even though he's going probably today to a new place. And so when they were talking about, is there a new place? Because the hospital will not send him home again. It was not a safe environment for him. There's stairs, there's no grab bars. It's not equipped for people who need those kinds of things. And the person who called me to talk to me about the transition was a person named April. Now, my birthday's in April, so that got my attention immediately, and I thought of that as a miracle. But the real miracle came out of it when I mentioned the fact. She asked me how I had met Kathleen. And I said, oh, Kathleen was a member of the congregation where I was the senior minister for 19 years. And we've been friends all of these years, even though she and her husband, who's a retired Kaiser doctor, moved to Boulder. And I've visited her when I've come there a couple of times. And she said, oh my God, you were a minister of a church? And she said, my husband's a minister. And April was kind of surprised. Her husband's a minister and I was a minister. And then I asked the next obvious question for me, what denomination? And she said, well, he's a unity minister, but it's not real well known. He's a minister of a small church, or was, he's retired now, in Denver called Unity Temple. And I said, oh my God, this is a God job. I am a unity minister. And what's your husband's name? She told me David Seabird. I know David Seabird from when I was on the seminary board. Isn't this amazing how Spirit puts things together? And so April and I have become really friends at a deep level, way beyond the human plane. And when I go to Colorado, my intention is to get together with David and April and meet them and see them and maybe have lunch or something. And so what I'm so aware of is that we're living in a collaboration, whether we recognize it or not. Miracles are happening all around us if we're willing to look for them. And so just this morning, April and I had a conversation, and there is a tentative yes from a place in Louisville. Louisville is where Willard and I used to go to eat Italian food at Kolachi's and the Blue Parrot. And Ed, you've probably gone there with us when you were in Boulder. I'm not sure, but Kolachi's was someplace we often took people out to eat. And, or Fabienne may have been there and gone to Kolachi's with us. But anyway, I misheard April when she was talking about that. And I thought she said Jupiter Village. And all of a sudden I went to cosmic levels. And I'll talk more about that. But when I Googled it, it ended up being Juniper. So Juniper Village in Louisville. And Mary is, interestingly, a person I got a haircut from yesterday. A lot of Marys coming into my life right now. Loved getting a haircut yesterday, just a trim. She specializes in long hair. And I said, I want to leave my hair longer. It's so much easier for me to take care of than it used to be having to curl it all the time and cut it every month. Sort of like you, Ed, moving from the pictures where you said, I had the hair then, one that I sent you from when we were in our 30s. And so it's fascinating. Marys are coming into my life. And then the last thing I just want to share with you is how important the Jupiter, because I thought they said Jupiter, and I all of a sudden went back to the cosmos. The Jupiter transits in my own personal chart. This is my chart. It's very, very personal based on my natal chart, birth chart. And the Neptune is transiting in conjunction with Jupiter. And it's in Pisces. I have more planets in Pisces than I do in Aries, which is where the sun is in my chart. So my signature is the ascendant, and I'm more Pisces than I am Aries, which gives me extremely high sensitivity. In the description, it was mentioned 12 times as it described me as a personality. And these two planets, Neptune and Jupiter, are in the strongest blend of the two planets in relationship. And so it can involve feelings of confusion. It can involve confusion about goals or ideals. And someone, I think, Patty, you said something about faith. Faith and aspirations and even religious feelings are subject to change. There's a lot of compassion for other people. There's also, and I know this about myself, I'm incredibly naive. I see essence in everyone, and I often miss shadow energy. I have a very naive tendency, and it said, beware of charlatans. And review carefully any major decisions. Have a healthy dose of skepticism. As well, it can be an antidote to being overly naive. And so it's fascinating, this be aware. But also there's renewed energy for the spiritual side. And reformatting and restructuring of your life as a result of events in the outer and this has certainly been happening as a result of what's going on with Willard, events in the outer and also internal changes. And so it's fascinating, really interesting. Jupiter is also transiting in conjunction with Venus, which is in Pisces in my natal chart. And so Jupiter is a huge influence. I'm actually filled with spiritual energy and optimistic energy during this transit, and optimism in my relationships. And any artistic endeavors that happen are going to flourish under Jupiter because it expands everything, makes everything accelerated. And the influence of Jupiter expands and makes everything radiant with whatever it comes in contact with. So that means my brother, that means all of you, because we've just had 90 minutes in contact with each other. And it says you will feel a renewed sense of connection to higher purpose in terms of your values. And love will be a given and it'll receive an extra boost. And it will connect you on soul to soul levels. This is a shift out of the human plane into soul to soul levels. And it said, this particular transit is one of the best for this soul to soul connection. And it can be productive of long-term benefits as you look ahead. So I felt really, really good about taking a deep dive into my own natal chart and the transits that are happening right now in the cosmos. But one of the interesting things it also said that Jupiter is going to be, and this is from March 22nd to April 8. And so this is right now. There's some polarizing energy coming in, and but I will also be very psychically attuned to others. And I will have this is interesting, this is about new birth, new and exciting spiritual insights. And I am tuning into an energy that is essentially beyond this physical plane. And it's becoming more and more real for me, more real than the mundane that is called reality. So all of a sudden, I'm reading printouts from a 70-page document that I got and sent for and paid for when I was listening to Cosmos and Psyche. And then I read the last line of that, and it says, hold back on major decisions during this time. Really fascinating. If we pay attention, there's something beyond our human minds that is guiding us. So we have just 2 minutes left, but I would just love to tell you how deeply, deeply, deeply I love all of you and how important all of you have been in my life. Some of our relationships go back many, many years. Ed and I go back 50 years. And many of you go back to when I came to Unity of Tustin, which is now 30 years ago. And what an amazing, amazing gift it is to be in the awareness of time and also of timelessness, of spirit, of soul, and of body, embodied experience here in the physical realm. So as we go to our closing, let's we already did Liebestrom as the beginning, I think, but do we want to begin it, to close with it again, but then stay on? We'll end the recording. And if you want to stay on and just all come back and say hi to each other or bye to each other again, we'll do that. But let's close with Liebestrom and then end the recording, and we can say bye to each other.